Amunet. 5,000 years ago, she was a beautiful princess and the only heir to the Egyptian throne. She was meant to become the supreme queen. But when her father's consort gave birth to a son, Amunet's future was stolen from her. She refused to accept her fate. Desperate, she shed her own blood to summon Seth, the god of death, offering everything she had in exchange for power. Seth granted her great strength, and the spell of darkness spread through her body. Amunet was transformed into a servant of death. With her newfound powers, she murdered her father and her baby brother. Then she attempted to complete the ritual by sacrificing a man, which would have allowed Seth himself to be reborn inside him. But before she could strike, the pharaoh's guards arrived. They used poison-tipped needles to paralyze her so she couldn't use her magic. Amunet was sentenced to a brutal punishment. Her body was mummified and sealed inside a sarcophagus meant to imprison her for eternity. That coffin was buried far from Egypt, hidden in an abyss, condemned to endless darkness. Centuries passed until one day, a missile strike on a village in Iraq unearthed the ancient tomb. The military quickly secured the site, and archaeologist Jenny arrived, escorted by special agents Nick and Vale. Together they entered the underground chamber. They were stunned by the sight of mercury flowing through the tomb, since ancient Egyptians believed mercury weakened demons. In the center they found a deep pit filled with mercury. Around it stood numerous idols, all facing inward rather than outward. Jenny realized the idols weren't guarding something, they were sealing it inside. At the bottom of the pit, chains extended downward, holding whatever was trapped below. Jenny concluded that this wasn't a tomb at all, but a prison designed to contain a powerful evil. Nick soon found the mechanism that held the chains. Impulsively he shot at it and the gears began to turn. The sarcophagus was slowly pulled up from the mercury. The sight of the runes carved into its surface filled them all with dread. As Nick stared at it, he suddenly saw a vision, a lone figure walking across the desert toward him. As she drew near, the woman's face became clear, Amunet's face. Just as she leaned in as if to kiss him, Jenny snapped him out of it. Before they could react, a swarm of spiders poured out of the cave. Vale was bitten and in a frenzy he opened fire wildly. The bullets didn't do much so the group retreated. Meanwhile, the military used a helicopter to lift the sarcophagus out of the pit. But as it was raised, crows suddenly began to gather outside in massive flocks. Ignoring the omen, the soldiers loaded the coffin onto a transport plane, preparing to fly it back to base. During the flight, the weather suddenly shifted from clear skies to a violent sandstorm. On board, Vale approached the sarcophagus with a strange look in his eyes. He pulled out a dagger and began cutting the straps holding the coffin. When his comrades tried to stop him, he stabbed one of them without hesitation. It became clear he was possessed. Unresponsive to their shouts, he charged forward, forcing Nick to shoot him. The chaos didn't end there. The plane began to shake violently as crows smashed into the windshield. With the pilots killed, the aircraft spiraled out of control. In the final moments, Nick strapped the only parachute onto Jenny and pushed her out, sacrificing himself as the plane crashed. When the wreckage was found, there were no survivors. The sarcophagus had burst open and inside, the mummy stirred. Amunet attacked a soldier, draining the very life from his body until he shriveled into a husk. With each soul she consumed, her body regenerated, regaining flesh and blood. Even worse, the soldier she killed rose again, reanimated under her power. Meanwhile, in a morgue, Nick suddenly woke up, despite being declared dead. Confused, he found Vale waiting for him. Vale revealed that after being bitten by the spider, he had been cursed by Amunet. Now Nick was cursed too. Vale explained that Nick was chosen by the god of death himself. Jenny later found Nick alive and tried to help him. They met at a bar where Nick admitted he didn't understand what had happened. He had no wounds and no reason to be alive. Jenny then shared her research. Ancient records told of a princess erased from history. She once wielded the blade of Seth, a dagger embedded with the eye of death. When the dagger and gem were united, the god of death could manifest on earth. When invaders once carried the dagger back to Europe, the jewel was separated from it. The eye of death was buried with a bishop, while the blade's location remained a mystery. But with Amunet freed, she would stop at nothing to recover the blade of Seth. Nick's visions of Vale grew stronger. At first he thought they were hallucinations, but when Vale appeared in the mirror, he realized it was real. Vale warned him again. Both of them were cursed, but Nick was the one Amunet needed. Once she killed him with the completed blade of Seth, the god of death would rise through him. As Nick tried to absorb this, the room suddenly filled with rats. At the same time, mummified creatures began to appear, closing in on him. The The swarm of rats lunged at his body, and the undead drew nearer. At that moment, a sudden beam of light flashed and Nick snapped back to consciousness. It turned out everything he had just experienced was only a hallucination. The constant stream of bizarre events left him rattled and panicked, but he followed the strange images in his mind and led Jenny to a crumbling convent. While exploring, the two became separated. As Nick looked around, the heavy church doors creaked open, and standing there was Princess Amunet, her beauty fully restored. Nick was momentarily mesmerized, but before he could react, several mummies grabbed him. Amunet leapt onto him, confirming that he was indeed the one chosen by the god of death. Then she smashed a nearby angel statue, revealing the long-lost blade of Seth hidden inside. She prepared to plunge the dagger into Nick but stopped short, because the Eye of Death, the jewel that completed the blade, was missing. Furious, she turned her wrath on Jenny, who had just arrived. Amunet hurled Jenny across the church with ease, but the distraction allowed Nick to wrestle free from the mummies. As Amunet raised her weapon to kill Jenny, Nick snatched the dagger and stabbed Amunet, buying them precious time to escape. They fled in a car racing down the road, but one of the mummies caught up and clung to them. The struggle sent their car tumbling off a hill, throwing them both out. Dazed, Nick tried to pull Jenny to safety, but Amunet emerged again from the mist. Grabbing a stick, Nick charged, only to be knocked unconscious with a single blow. Just as Amunet prepared to finish Jenny, a volley of arrows pierced her, followed by heavy iron chains that bound her tightly. It was the secret research organization Jenny worked for. They had tracked Amunet down. She was captured and taken back to their secure base. The leader of the base explained to Nick that under no circumstances could Amunet be allowed to complete the ritual. If she succeeded in summoning the god of death, Seth would enter Nick's body, and the entire world would be doomed. Staring at the imprisoned Amunet, Nick slipped into another vision. In it, Amunet whispered temptations. If he allowed Seth to rise, he would wield the power of life and death itself, and even Amunet would belong to him. For a moment, Nick nearly gave in, but the illusion shattered when the doctors increased the mercury infusion into Amunet's body, suppressing her again. Meanwhile, far away, another archaeological team unearthed a crusader's tomb. Inside, they discovered a glowing red gem, the lost Eye of Death. Instantly, Amunet sensed its return. She recited a dark incantation, sending a sacred beetle crawling into the ear of one of the researchers. Under her control, he sabotaged the lab, cutting the power that kept the mercury flowing. Amunet's strength returned, and she ripped herself free of the chains. The guards tried to contain her, but they were powerless. She drained them one by one, leaving behind shriveled corpses as she regained her full power. Chanting, she summoned a massive sandstorm that swept across the city. As chaos spread, Vale appeared again to Nick, guiding him. He insisted the only way to stop Amunet was to destroy the Eye of Death. He led Nick to the tomb where the gem had been taken, but Amunet was already there. Her chants awakened an army of ancient guardians, dryads who had slept for 1,000 years. They bowed before her and obeyed her command. She reclaimed the Eye of Death, finally reuniting it with the blade of Seth. Nick and Jenny fought through endless waves of mummies as they tried to reach her. Though Nick destroyed many, their numbers never stopped growing. They were eventually forced into an underground waterway. While struggling to swim back up, Amunet dragged Jenny beneath the water. Nick surfaced only to find himself surrounded by more mummies, and when he looked back, Jenny's lifeless body floated beside him. Enraged, Nick faced Amunet again. She obliterated her minions with a wave of power, determined to complete the ritual she began 5,000 years ago. She knocked Nick to the ground, but when she prepared to strike, she realized the blade of Seth was no longer in her hand. Nick had stolen it in the struggle. He raised it and shattered the Eye of Death against the ground. Amunet tried one final temptation. If Nick used the blade on himself, he could master the god of death's power and bring Jenny back to life. Without hesitation, Nick plunged the dagger into his own chest. Darkness poured into him, and his body convulsed as Seth's spirit tried to take over. When his eyes opened again, glowing with double pupils, Amunet expected to see the god of death reborn. But instead Nick resisted. His will overpowered the darkness, and he controlled the power rather than being consumed by it. Terrified, Amunet tried to seduce him again, but he easily overpowered her. Using his newfound strength, he drained her of life, leaving her weakened and captured once more. Afterward, Nick turned to Jenny's body. With a touch, he used the power of death to restore her to life. But knowing he could never be fully human again, Nick chose to leave, unable to stay by her side. In the aftermath, Amunet was sealed once again inside a sarcophagus. Somewhere far from civilization, Nick resurrected his fallen friend Vale, and the two rode off together. Nick was determined to find a way to break the curse, and only then could he hope to return to the woman he loved. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of the exciting content coming your way. Every new video is made with you in mind, and I'd love to have you here for the journey. See you in the next one.